evening, and afternoon, my ears. It's been a hot minute, isn't it? It's been a long time running. If we were to remember yesterday, then today is going to be meaningless. So, why don't we focus on the present? Now, today's is going to be reading and continuing the book that I held dearest in my heart. It goes by the name of The 5 People You Meet in Heaven. And no matter where you are in this entire world, I believe that everyone, and I mean everyone, that I've met and supported every single one of us besides, will have the rest of their good life. Just as the main protagonist in the story, who goes by the name of Eddie, will be. Last time, we went through the first person in Eddie's path into heaven. We understood that forgiveness means acknowledgement. It means that as long as life goes forward, you become a better person by the end of it. Everything matters. So once again, I want all of you to relax. Close your eyes. And if it's sound asleep in your bed, I want you to let go of all the stress, all the pending sadness, and the pressure that you held in your heart, because none of it matters if you want to just think with happiness. And happiness will not be too far from reach if I have you. Now, let's continue the story, shall we? Sunday, 3 p.m. Back at the pier, the crowd stood silently around the wreckage of Freddy's freefall. A woman touched their throats. Mothers pulled their children away. Several burly men in tank tops slid to the front, as if this was something they should handle. But once they got there, they, too, only looked on, helpless. The sun baked down, sharpening the shadows, causing them to shield their eyes as if they were floating. How bad is it? People whispered from the back of the crowd. Dominguez burst through, his face red, his maintenance shirt drenched in sweat. He saw the carnage. No, Eddie, he moaned, grabbing his head. Security workers arrived. They pushed people back, but then they too fell into impotent posture, hands on their hips, waiting for the ambulance. It was as if all of them, the mothers, the fathers, the kids on the giant Coke soda cups, were too stunned to look and too stunned to leave. Death was at their feet as a carnival tune played over the park speakers. How bad is it? Sirens sounded. Men in uniforms arrived. Yellow tapes were stretched around the area. The arcade booths pulled down the grates. The rides will close indefinitely. Word spread across the beach of the bad thing that happened, and by sunset, Ruby Piers was empty. That was the unfortunate passing of Eddie. But the story has only just begun. Today is Eddie's birthday. From his bedroom, even with the door closed, Eddie can smell the beefsteak his mother is grilling with green peppers and sweet red onions. A strong, woodly odor that he loves. Eddie, she yells from the kitchen. Where are you? Everyone's here. He rolls off the bed and puts away the comic book. He's 17 today, too old for such things, but he still enjoys the idea. Colorful heroes like the Phantom fighting the bad guys, saving the world. He has given his collection to his school-age cousins from Romania, who came to America a few months earlier. Eddie's family met them at the docks, and they moved into the bedroom that Eddie shared with his brother Joe. The cousin cannot speak English, but they like comic books. Anyhow, it gives Eddie an excuse to keep him around. There's the birthday boy, his mother crows when he rambles into the room. He wears a bottom-down white shirt and a blue tie, which pinches his muscular neck. A grunt of hellos and raised beer glasses came from the assembled visitors. Families, friends, peer workers. Eddie's father is playing cards in the corner, in a small cloud of cigar smoke. Hey Ma, guess what? Joe yells out. Eddie met a girl last night. Oh, did he? Eddie feels a rush of blood. Yeah, so he's gonna marry her. Shut your trap, Eddie says to Joe. Joe ignores him. Yep, he came into the room all googly-eyed. And he said, Joe, I met a girl and I'm gonna marry. Eddie sees. I said, shut it. What's her name, Eddie? No one asked. Does she go to church? And he goes to his brother and socks him in the arm. Ow. Eddie, I told you to shut it. Joe blurts out, and he dances with her at the start as the large crack hits the side of Joe's face. Ow! Joe exclaims. Shut up. Eddie, stop that. Even the Romanian cousins look up now. Finally, they understand as the two brothers grab each other and flew away, clearing the crouch. Until Eddie's father puts down his cigar and yells, Knock it off, before I slap both of yous. The brothers separate, panting and glaring. Some of the relatives smile. One of the aunts whispers, He must really like this girl. Later, after a special steak has been eaten and the candles has been blown out and most of the guests has come home, Eddie's mother turns on the radio. There's news about the war in Europe. And Eddie's father says something about lumber and copper wire. Being hard to get if things gets worse. There will be maintenance of park nearly impossible. Such awful news, Eddie's mother says. Not at a birthday. She turns the dial to a small box offered music, an orchestra playing a swing melody, and she smiles and hums along. Then she comes over to Eddie, who is slouched in his chair, picking at the last piece of cakes. She removes her apron, folds it over her chair, and lifts Eddie's by the hands. Show me how you dance with your new friend, she says. Ma, go on. Eddie stands as if being led to his execution. His brother smirks, but his mother, with her pretty round face, keeps humming and stepping back and forth until Eddie falls into the dance step with her. Dear, she sings with melody. When you're with me, the stars and the moon, in June. They move around the living room till Eddie breaks down and laughs. He's already taller than his mother, but a good 6 inches, yet she swirls him with ease. So, you like this girl? And he loses a step. It's alright, she says. I'm happy for you. They spin at the table, and Eddie's mother grabs Joe and pulls him up. Now, you two dance, she says. With him, Ma. But she insists, and they relent. And soon Joe and Eddie are laughing and stumbling into each other. They join hands and move, swooping up and down in exaggerated circles. Around and around the table they go, to the mother's delight, as the clarinets lead the radio melody and a Romanian cousin claps along, and the final whips of crow steak evaporates into party air. That was the 17th birthday of Eddie's. A reminiscent in memory that crossed the very person's mind after his passing. Now, Eddie meets the second person in heaven. Eddie felt his feet touch ground. The sky was changing again, from cobalt blue to charcoal gray. And Eddie was surrounded now by fallen trees and blackened rubble. He grabbed his arm, shoulders, thighs, and calves. He felt stronger than before, but when he tried to touch his toe, he could no longer do so. The limberness was gone. No more childish rubbery sensation. Every muscle he had was as tight as piano wires. He looked around at a lifeless terrain. A nearby hill lay a busted wagon and the rotting bones of an animal. Eddie felt a hot wind whipped across his face. The sky exploded to flaming yellow. And then again, Eddie ran. He ran differently now, in the hard, measured steps of a soldier. He heard thunder or something like thunder, explosions, or bomb blasts. He instinctively fell to the ground, landed on his stomach, and pulled himself along by his forearm. The sky burst open and gushed rain, a thick, brownish downpour. Eddie lowers his head and crawls along in the mud, spitting away the dirty water that gathered around his lips. Finally, he felt his head brushed against something solid. He looked up to see a rifle dug into the ground, with a helmet sitting atop it and a set of dog tags hanging around the grip. Blinking through the rain, he fingered the dog tags. I know what you're thinking. It's not what it is. And scrambled backwards wildly into a porous wall of strangly vines that hung from a massive banyan tree. He dove into the darkness. He put his knees into the crouch, and he tried to catch his breath. Feared had found him, even in heaven. The name on the dog tag was his. Young men go to war, sometimes because they have to, sometimes because they want to. Always, they feel like they're supposed to. This comes from the sad, layered stories of life, which over the centuries have seen courage confused with pick-up arms, the cowardice confused with laying them down. When his country entered war, and he woke up early one rainy morning, shaved, combed back his hair, and enlisted. Others were fighting. He would, too. His mother did not want him to go. When informed of this news, his father lit a cigarette and blew the smoke out slowly. When was all he asked. Since he never fired an actual rifle, Eddie began to practice at a shooting arcade at Ruby Pier. He paid a nickel, and the machine hummed, and you squeezed of trigger and fired metal slugs into pictures of jungle animals. A lion or a giraffe. Eddie went every evening. After running the brake levers and the low folks miniature railway, Ruby Pier had added a number of new, smaller attractions because roller coasters, after the Depression, had become too expensive. The miniature runway was pretty much just that. The train cars no higher than a grown man's thigh. Eddie, before enlisting, had been working to save money to study engineering. That was his goal. He wanted to build things, even if his brother, Joe, kept saying, "Come on, Eddie, you aren't smart enough for that." But once the war started, the pier business dropped. Most of Eddie's customers now were women alone with children. Their fathers had gone to war. Sometimes the children asked Eddie to lift them over his head, and when Eddie complied, he saw the mother's sad smile. He guessed it was the right lift, but the wrong pair of arms. Soon, Eddie figured he would join these distant men, and his life of greasing tracks and running brake levers would be over. War was his call to manhood. Maybe someone will miss him. Maybe someone will miss him too. One of those final nights, Eddie was bent over the small arcade rifle, firing with deep concentration. Bang, bang, try to imagine actually shooting at the enemy. Bang. Would they make a noise when you shot them? Bang. Or would they just go down like the lions and giraffes on TV? Bang. Bang. Suddenly, a voice appeared. Practicing to kill, are ya? Mickey Shia was standing behind Eddie. His hair was the color of French vanilla ice cream, wet with sweat, and his face was red from whatever he's been drinking. Eddie shrugged and returned to his shooting. Bang, another hit. Bang, another. Mickey grunted. Eddie wished Mickey would go away and let him work on his aim. You could feel the old drunk behind him. You could hear his labor breathing, the nasal hissing in and out, like the bike tire being inflated by a pump. Eddie kept shooting. Suddenly, he felt a painful grip on his shoulder. Listen to me, lad. Mickey's voice was a low growl. War is no game. If there's ever a shot to be made, you make it. You hear? No guilt. No room for hesitation. You fire, and you fire, and you don't think about who you're shooting or killing or why. You hear me? You want to come home again? You just fire. You don't think. He squeezed even harder. It's the thinking that gets you, killed. Eddie turned and stared at Mickey. Mickey slapped him hard on the cheek, and Eddie instinctively raised his fist to retaliate. But Mickey belched and wobbled backward, and he looked at Eddie as if he was going to cry. The mechanical gum stopped humming. Eddie's nickel was up. Young men go to war, sometimes because they have to, sometimes because they want to. A few days later, Eddie packed a duffel bag and left the pier behind. The rain stopped. Eddie, shivering and wet beneath the banyan tree, exhaled a long, hard breath. He pulled the vines apart and saw a rifle and helmet still stuck in the ground. He remembered why soldier did this. It marked the graves of their death. He crawled out of his knees. Off in the distance, below a small ridge, was the remains of a village, bombed and burned into a little more than rubble. For a moment, Eddie stared, his mouth slightly open, his eyes bringing the scenes into tighter focus. Then, his chest tightened like a man who just had bad news broken. This place, he knew it. It had haunted his dreams. Smallpox, a voice suddenly said. Pardon for that. It was disconnect. Anyhow. Oh, sorry. Apologize for the inconveniences. There's been some technical difficulties. should be clear now. Smallpox, a voice suddenly said. Let's hope that never happens again. Smallpox, typhoid, tetanus, yellow fever. It came from above, somewhere in a tree. I never did find out what yellow fever was. Hell, never met anyone who had it. The voice was strong, with sliced out and raw and gravely edges, like a man who've been yelling for hours. I got all those shots for all those diseases, and I died here anyhow. Healthy as a horse. A tree shook. Some small fruit fell in front of Eddie. How are you like them apples? The voice said. Eddie stood up and cleared his throat. Come out, he said. Come up, the voice said. And Eddie was in a tree near the top, which was as tall as the office building. His legs straddled a large limb, and the earth below seems a large drop away. Through the smaller branches and the thick leaves, Eddie could make out the shadowy figure of a man in army fatigues, sitting back against a tree trunk. His face was covered with a coal-black substance. His eyes glowed red like tiny bulbs. Eddie swallowed hard. Captain? He whispered. Is that you? They had served together in the army. The captain was Eddie's commanding officer. He fought in the Philippines, and they parted in Philippines, and Eddie had never seen it again. Yet I heard he died in combat. A wisp of cigarette smoke appeared. Did he explain the rules to you, soldier? And he looked down. He saw the earth far below. Bless him. Yet he knew he could fall. I'm dead, he said. You got that much right. And you're dead. Got that right too. And you're my second person? The captain held up a cigarette. He smiled as if to say, Can you believe you get to smoke up here? He took a long drag and blew out a small white cloud. Bet you didn't expect me, huh? And he learned many things during the war. He learned to ride atop a tank. He learned to shave with cold water in his helmet. He learned to be careful when shooting from a foxhole, lest he hit a tree and wound himself with deflected shrapnel. He learned to smoke. He learned to march. He learned to cross a rope bridge while carrying. All at once, an overcoat, a radio, a carbine, a gas mask, a tripod for a machine gun, a backpack, and several bandoliers on his shoulder. He learned how to drink the worst coffee he ever tasted. He learned a few words in a few foreign language. He learned to spit a great distance. He learned the nervous cheer of a soldier for survived combat, when men slap each other and smile as if it's over. We can go home now. And he learned the sinking depression of a soldier's second combat, when he realizes that fighting does not stop in one battle. There is more and more and more after that. He learned to whistle through his teeth. He learned to sleep on rocky earth. He learned the scabies are itchy little mites and burrow into your skin, especially if you have worn the same filthy clothes for a week. He learned a man's bone to really look right when they burst through the skin. He learned to pray quickly. He learned in which pocket to keep the letters to his family and Margaret, in case he should be found dead by his fellow soldiers. He learned that sometimes you're sitting next to a buddy in the dugout, whispering about how hungry you are. In the next instant, there was a small whoosh, and the buddy slumps over, and his hunger is no longer an issue. He learned as 1 year turned to 2, and 2 years turned towards 3, and even the strong, muscular men vomit on their shoes when the transport plane's about to unload them. And even the officers take and talk in their sleep the night before combat. He learned how to take a prisoner, although he never learned how to become one. Then, one night, on a Philippine island, his group came under heavy fire, and scattered for shelters, and the skies were lit, and Eddie heard one of his buddies. I bet that's one of the buddies. Down in the ditch, weeping like a child, and he yelled at him, "Shut up, will ya?" And he realized the man was crying because there was an enemy soldier standing over him with a rifle at his head. And Eddie felt something cold as a neck, and there was one behind him as well. The captain stubbed out his cigarette. He was older than the man in Eddie's troop, a lifetime military man with a lanky swagger and a prominent chin that gave him this resemblance to a movie actor of the day. Most of the soldier liked him well enough, although he had a short temper and a habit of yelling inches from his face. So you could see his teeth, already yellow from tobacco. Still, the captain always promised that he would leave no man behind, no matter what happened, and the man took comfort in that. "Captain, and he said again, still stunned. "Affirmative. Sir, no need for that, but much obliged. You look like the last time you saw me." He grinned, then spat over the tree branch. He saw Eddie's confused expressions. "You're right. There ain't no reason to spit up there. You don't get sick either. Your breath is always the same, and your chow's incredible." "Chow?" Eddie didn't get any of this. Captain, look, there's a mistake. I still don't know why I'm here. I had a nothing life, you see. I worked maintenance. I lived in the same apartment for years. I took care of rides, Ferris wheels, roller coasters, stupid little rocket ships. It was nothing to be proud of. I just kind of drifted. What I'm saying is, Eddie swallowed. What am I doing here? The captain looked at him with those glowing red eyes, and Eddie resisted asking the other question. He now wondered after the blue man. Did he kill the captain too? You know, I've been wondering, the captain said, rubbing his chin. The man in front of the unit, did he stay in touch? Willingham, Morton, Smitty. Did you ever see those guys? I don't remember the names. The truth was, I have not kept in touch. War, it could bond men like the magnet. But like a magnet, it could repel them too. The things they saw, the things they did. Sometimes, they just wanted to forget. To be honest, sir, we all kind of fell out. He shrugged. Sorry. The captain nodded as if he expected as much. And you? You went back to the fun part where you all promised to go if you got out alive. Free rides for all GIs? 2 girls per guy in the ton of love? Isn't that what you said? And he nearly smiled. That was what he said. What they all said. But when the war ended, nobody came. Yeah, I went back, Eddie said. And I never left. I tried. I made plans, but this damn legs. I don't know. Nothing worked out. Eddie shrugged. The captain studied his face. His eyes narrowed. His voice lowered. You still struggle? He asked. Go. You go. You go. The enemy soldier screamed and poked him with bayonets. Eddie, Smitty, and Morton, Raposo, and the captain were herded down a steep hill, hands on their heads. Mortar shells exploding around them, and he saw a figure run through the trees, then fall in the cap of bullets. He tried to take a mental snapshot as they marched in the darkness, huts, roads, whatever he could make out, knowing such information would be precious for an escape. A plan roared in the distance, filling Eddie with a sudden, sickening wave of despair. It is the inner torture of every captured soldier, the short distance between freedom and seizure. If Eddie could only jump up and grab the wings of that plane, he could fly away from this mistake. Instead, he and the others were bound at a wrist and ankles. They were dumped down inside a bamboo bracket, and brackets set on stilts above the muddy ground. And they remained there for days, weeks, months, forced to sleep on a burlap sack stuffed with straw. A clay jug to serve as their toilet. At night, the enemy guards would crawl under the hood and listen to their conversations. As time passed, contrast, they said less and less. They grow thin and weak. Their ribs grow visible. Even Rebozo, who had been a chunky kid when he enlisted. Their food consists of rice balls filled with salt, and once a day, some brownish broth with grass floating in it. One night, Eddie plucked a dead hornet from a bowl. It was missing his wings, and the others stopped eating. Their captor seems unsure of what to do with them. In the evening, they would enter with bayonets and wiggle their blades at the Americans' noses, yelling in a foreign language, waiting for answers. It was never productive. There were only 4 of them, near as Eddie could tell, and the captain guessed that they too have drifted away from a large unit and word after it happens in a real war, making up day by day. Their faces were gaunt and bony, with dark knobs of hair. One looked too young to be a soldier. Another had crooked teeth Eddie had ever seen. The captain called them Crazy 1, Crazy 2, Crazy 3, and Crazy 4. We don't want to know their names, he said. And we don't want them to know ours. Men adapted to captivity, some better than others. Morton, a skinny, chattering youth from Chicago, would fidget whenever he heard noise from outside, rubbing his chin and mumbling, "Oh damn, oh damn, oh damn," until the others told him to shut up. Smitty, a fireman's son from Brooklyn, was quiet most of the time, but he often seemed to be swallowing something, his Adam's apple loping up and down. Eddie later learned that he was chewing on his tongue. Rebozo, a young red-headed kid from Portland, Oregon, kept a poker face during the waking hours, but at night he often woke up screaming, "Not me! Not me!" Eddie mostly seethed. He clenched his fist and slapped it into his palm, hours on end, knuckles to skin, like the anxious baseball players he had been in his youth. At night, I dreamed that he was back at the pier, on the derby horse carousel, where 5 customers raced in circles until the bell rang. He was racing his buddies, or his brothers, or Margaret. But then the train turned, and the 4 crazies was on the adjacent ponies, poking at him, sneering. Years of waiting at the piers for the ride to finish, for the waves to pull back, for his father to speak to him, had trained Eddie in the art of patience. But he wanted out. He wanted revenge. He grounded his jaws and slapped his pawn, and he thought about it, all the fights he's been in the back of his old neighborhood. The time he had sent 2 kids to the hospital with a garbage can lid. He pictured what he'd do to these guards if they didn't have guns. Then, one morning, the prisoners were awakened by screaming and flashing bayonets, and the 4 crazies had them up and bound and let down into a shaft. There were no lights. The ground was cold. pickaxe and shovels and metal buckets. "It's the damn coal mine," Morgan said. From that day forward, Eddie and the others were forced to strip coal from the walls to help the enemy's war effort. Some shoveled, some scraped, some carried pieces of the slate, built triangles to hold up the ceiling. There were other prisoners there too, foreigners who didn't know English and who looked at Eddie with hollow eyes. Speaking was prohibited. One cup of water was given every few hours. The prisoners' faces, by the end of the day, were hopelessly black. Their necks and shoulders throbbed from leaning over. For the first few months of this captivity, Eddie went to sleep with Margaret's picture and his helmet propped up in front of him. He wasn't much for praying, but he prayed just the same, making up the words and keeping the count each night. "Lord, I'll give you these 6 days if you give me 6 days with her. I'll give you these 9 days if I give 9 days with her. I'll give you 16 days if I give 16 days to her." Then, during the 4th month, something happened. Raposo developed a ugly skin rash and severe indigestion. He couldn't eat a thing. At night, he sweated through his filthy clothes until they were soaking wet. He soiled himself. There were no clean clothes to give him, so he slept naked on the brown lap. And the captain placed his sack over him like a blanket. The next day, down the mine, Rebozo could barely stand. The 4 crazies showed no pity. When he slowed, they poked him with sticks and kept him scraping. "Leave him be," Eddie growled. Crazy 2, the most brutal of their captors, slammed Eddie with a bayonet butt. He went down, a shot of pain spreading between his shoulder and blades. Raposo scraped a few more pieces of gold, then collapsed. Crazy 2 screamed at him to get up. "He's sick," Eddie yelled, struggling to his feet. Crazy 2 slammed him down again. "Shut up, Eddie," Morton whispered, "for your own good." Crazy 2 leaned over Rebozo. He pulled back his eyelids. Rebozo moaned. Crazy 2 made an exaggerated smile and cooed, as if dealing with a baby. He went, and laughed. And he laughed looking at all of them, making eye contact, making sure they're watching him. Then he pulled out his pistol, rammed it into Rebozo's ear, and shot him in the head. Eddie felt his body ripped in half. His eyes blurred and his brain went numb. The echo of the gunshots hung in the mind as Rebozo's face soaked in a spreading puddle of blood. Morton puts his head over his mouth. The captain looked down. Nobody moved. Crazy 2 kicked black dirt over the body, then glared at Eddie and spat at his feet. He yelled something at Crazy 3 and Crazy 4, both of whom sing as stunning and stunned as the prisoners. For a moment, Crazy 3 shook his head and mumbled, as if saying a prayer. His eyelid lowered and his lips moving fiercely. But Crazy 2 waved the gun and yelled again and Crazy 3 and Crazy 4 slowly lifted Raposo's body by its foot and dragged it along the mine floor, leaving a trail of wet blood, which, in the darkness, looked like spoiled oil. They dropped it against the wall, next to the pickaxe. After that, Eddie stopped praying. He stopped counting days. He and the captain spoke only of escaping before they all met the same fate. The captain figured the enemy war effort was desperate. That was why they needed every half-dead prisoner to scrape gold. Each day in the mine, there were fewer and fewer bodies. At night, Eddie heard bombing. Seemed to be getting closer. If things got too bad, the captain figured their captors would bail out, destroying everything. He had seen ditches dug beyond the prisoners' bar racks and large oil barrels positioned up the steep hill. The oil's for burning the evidence, the captain whispered. They're digging our graves. 3 weeks later, under a hazy moon sky, Crazy 3 was inside the barracks, standing guard. He had 2 large rocks, almost the size of bricks, which, in his boredom, he tried to juggle. He kept dropping them, picking them up, tossing them high and dropping them again. Eddie, covered in black rash, looked up, annoyed at the thudding noise. He'd been trying to sleep, but now he lifted himself slowly. His vision cleared. He felt his nerves pricking up to life. "Captain," he whispered, "ready to move?" The captain raised his head. "What are you thinking?" "Them rocks." And he nodded towards the guard. "What about them?" the captain said. "I can juggle." Then he whispered. The captain squinted. "What?" But Eddie was already yelling at the guard. "Hey, yo, you're doing it wrong." He made a circular motion with his palm. "This way. You do it this way. Gimme." He held out his hand. "I can juggle. Give me." Crazy 3 looked at him cautiously. Of all the guards, Eddie felt he has his best chance of this one. Crazy 3 had occasionally sneaked the prisoner's piece of bread and tossed them through the small hut hole that served as a window. Eddie made a circular motion again and smiled. Crazy 3 approached, stopped, went back for his bayonet, then walked the 2 rocks over to Eddie. "Like this," Eddie said, and he began to juggle effortlessly. He had learned when he was 7 years old, when an Italian sideshowed man who juggled 6 plates at once. Eddie had spent countless hours practicing on the boardwalk, pebbles, rubber balls, whatever he could find. It was no big deal. Most Pierce kids could juggle. But now, he worked the 2 rocks furiously, juggling them faster, impressing the guards. And then, he stopped, held the rocks out and said, "Give me another one." Crazy 3 grunted. 3 rocks, see?" But he held up 3 fingers. 3. By now, Morton and Smitty were sitting up, and the captain was moving closer. "Where are we going here?" Smitty mumbled. If I can get one more rocks, Eddie mumbled back. Crazy 3 opened a bamboo door and did what Eddie hoped he would do. He yelled for the others. Crazy 1 appeared with a fat rock, and Crazy 2 followed him, and Crazy 3 thrust the rock at Eddie and yelled something. Then he stepped back, grinned at the others, and motioned for them to sit, as if to say, "Watch this." Eddie tossed the rock into a rhythmic weave. Each one was as big as his palm. He sang the carnival tune. And the guards laughed. Eddie laughed. The captain laughed. Forced laughter to buy time. Get closer, Eddie sang, pretending the words were part of the melody. Morton and Smitty slid gently in, feigning interest. The guards were enjoying the diversion. Their postures slackened. Eddie tried to swallow his breathing, just a little longer. He threw one rock high into the air, then juggled the other two. Then caught the third, and did it again. Crazy 3 said, despite himself. You like that? Eddie said. He was juggling faster now. He kept tossing one rock high and watching his captain's eyes as he followed it into the air. He sang, da-da-da-da-da-da-da. Then, when I count to 3, da-da-da-da-da-da. Captain, the guy on the left. Crazy 2 frowned suspiciously, but Eddie smiled away the juggler's back and Ruby Pure and smiled when they were losing the audience. Looky here, looky here, looky here. Eddie called, greatest show on earth, buddy boy. Eddie went faster, then counted. 1, 2, then tossed a rock much higher than before. The crazies watched it rise. Now, Eddie yelled. In mid-juggle, he grabbed the rock and, like the good baseball pitcher he had always been, whipped it hard into the face of Crazy 2, breaking his nose. He caught the second rock and threw it, left-handed, square into chins of Crazy 1, who fell back as the captain jumped him, grabbing his bayonet. Crazy 3, momentarily frozen, reached for his pistol and fired wildly as Morton and Smitty tackled his leg. The door burst open, and Crazy 4 ran in. Then Eddie threw the last rock at him and missed his head by inches. But as he ducked, the captain was waiting against the wall with the bayonet, which he drove through Crazy 4's ribcage as hard as the two of them tumbled through the door. Eddie, powered by adrenaline, leaped on Crazy 2 and pounded his face harder than he had ever pounded anything back in Pitkin Avenue. He grabbed a loose rock and slammed it against his skull. Again and again. Until he looked at his hand and saw a hideous, purplish goo that he realized was blood and skin and coal ash mixed together. Then he heard a gunshot grab his head, smearing the goo on his temple. He looked up and saw Smitty standing over him, holding an enemy pistol. Crazy 2's body went slack. He was bleeding from the chest. For Rebozo, Smitty rumbled. Within minutes, all 4 guards were dead. prisoners, thin and barefoot, covered in blood, running now for the steep hill. Eddie had expected gunfire, more guards to fight, but there was no one. The other huts were empty. In fact, the entire camp was empty. Eddie wondered how long it had been, just the 4 crazies and them. The rest probably took off when they heard the bombing, the captain whispered, when the last group left. The oil barrels were pitched at the first rise of the hill. Less than 100 yards away was the entrance to the coal mine. There was a supply hut nearby, and Morton made sure it was empty, then ran inside. He emerged with an armful of grenades, rifles, and 2 primitive-looking flamethrowers. "Let's burn it down," he said. Looking back, it was a grueling experience, but once again, today is Eddie's birthday. The cake read, "Good luck, fight hard," and on the side, along the manila frosted edge, someone has added the words, "Come home soon," in blue squiggly letters, but the OON is squeezed together, so it reads more like son or "Come home, son." Eddie's mother already cleaned and pressed the clothes he will wear the next day. She's hung them on the hangers on his bedroom closet and doorknob, and put his own 1 pair of dress shoes beneath them. Eddie is in the kitchen, fooling with his young Romanian cousins, his hand behind his back as they try to punch his stomach. One points out the kitchen windows at the Parisian carousel, which is led for the evening customers. "Horses," the child exclaims. The front door opens, and Eddie hears a voice that makes his heart jump. Even now, he wonders if this is a weakness. It shouldn't be taking off to war. "Hey, Eddie," Margaret says. And there she was, in a kitchen doorway, looking wonderful. And Eddie feels that familiar tickles in his chest. He brushes a little bit of rainwater from her hair and smiles. She has a small box in her hands. "I brought you something for your birthday. And, well, for your leaving, too." She smiles again, and he wants to hug her so badly. She thinks she'll burst. He doesn't care what is in the box. He only wants to remember her holding it out for him. As always, with Margaret, Eddie mostly wants to freeze time. "This is swell," he says. She laughs. "You haven't opened it yet?" "Listen," he moves closer. "To you, Eddie," someone yells from the other room. "Come on and blow out the candles." "Yeah, we're hungry." "Oh, Sal, shush." "Oh, we are." There's cake and beer and milk and cigar and a toast to Eddie's success. And there's a moment where his mother begins to cry, and he hugs her other son, Joe, who is staying stateside on account of his flat feet. Later that night, Eddie walks Margaret along the promenade. He knows the names of every ticket taker and food vendor and all wish him luck. Son of the old woman got teary-eyed, and Eddie figures they have sons of their own, already gone. He and Margaret buy saltwater taffy, molasses, and tea, and berry, and root beer flavors. They pick out pieces from a small white bag, playfully fighting each other's finger. At the Penny's arcade, Eddie pulls on a plaster hand, and an arrow goes past, clammy and harmless and mild, all the way to hot stuff. You're really strong, Margaret says. Hot stuff, Eddie says, making a muscle. At the end of the night, they stood on Broadway in a fashion they have seen in a movie. They holding hands and leaning against the railing out on the sand. An old rag picker has built a small fire from sticks and torn towels is heard huddling by it, settling for the night. You don't have to ask me to wait, Margaret says suddenly. Eddie swallows. I don't? She shakes her head. Eddie smiles. Save for the question that has caught in his throat all night, he feels as if a string has just shot from his heart and looped around her shoulder, pulling her close, making her his. He loves her more in this moment than he had thought he could have ever loved anymore. A drop of rain hits Eddie's forehead, then another. It looks up at the gathering clouds. Hey, hot stuff, Margaret says. She smiles, but then her face droops, and she blinks back water. Although Eddie couldn't tell if it is raindrops or tears. Don't get killed. Okay? She says. Back in the war, a feared and freed soldier is often furious. The days and nights he lost, the tortures of humiliations he suffered, it all demands a fierce revenge, a balancing of the accounts. So, when Morton, his arm full of stolen weapons, said to the others, "Let's burn them down," there was a quick, if not logical, agreement. Inflated by their new sense of control, the men scattered with the enemy's firepower. Smitty to the entrance of the mine shaft, Morton and Eddie to the oil entrance and barrels. The captain went in search of a transport vehicle. 5 minutes, then back here, he barked. That bombing's gonna start soon and we need to be gone. Got it? 5. Which was all it took to destroy what had been their home for nearly half a year. Smitty dropped a grenade down the mine shaft and ran. Eddie and Morton rolled down the barrels into the hot complex, pried them open, then one by one fired the nozzles of their newly acquired flamethrowers and watched the hot ignite. Burn, Morton yelled. Burn, Eddie yelled. The mine shaft exploded from below. Black smoke rose from the entrance. Smitty, his work done, ran towards the meeting point. Morton kicked his oil barrel into the hood and unleashed a rope-like burst of flame. Eddie watched and sneered and moved down the path to the final hut. It was larger, more like a barn. and he lifted his weapon. This was over, he said to himself. Over. All these weeks and months in the hands of those bastards, those subhuman guards with their bad teeth and bony faces and the death hornets in their soup. He didn't know what would happen to them next, but it could not be any worse than what they have endured. Eddie squeezed the trigger. Whoosh. The fire shut up quickly. The bamboo was dry, and within a minute, the walls of the barn were melting in orange and yellow flames. Off in the distance, Eddie heard a rumbling of the engine. The captain. He hoped and had found something to escape in. And then, suddenly, from the skies, the first sound of bombing, the noise they have been hearing every night. It was even closer now. And Eddie realized whoever it was seeing the flames. They might rescued. They might be going home. He turned to the burning barn and... What was that? He blinked. What was that? Something darted across the room into an opening door. Eddie tried to focus. The heat was intense, and he shielded his eyes with his freed hand. He couldn't be sure, but he thought he could see a small figure running inside the fire. Hey, Eddie yelled, stepping forward, lowering his weapon. Hey! The roof of the barn began to crumble, splashing sparks and flame. Eddie jumped back. His eyes watered. Maybe it was a shadow. Eddie, now! Warren was up the path, waving for Eddie to come. Eddie's eyes were stinging. He was breathing hard. He pointed and yelled, I think there's someone in there. Morton puts a hand to his ear. What? Someone in there. Morton shook his head. He couldn't hear. Eddie turned and was almost certain he saw it again, crawling inside the burning barn. A child-sized figure. It had been more than 2 years since Eddie had seen anything besides a grown man. And the shadowy shape made him think suddenly of his small cousin back at the pier, and a little folks miniature railway used to run, and a roller coaster, and the kids on the beach, and Margaret, and her picture, and all he had shut from his mind for so many months. Hey, come out, he yelled, dropping the flamethrower, moving even closer. I won't shoot. A hand grabbed his shoulder, yanking him backwards, and he spun, his fist clenched. It was Morton, yelling, Eddie, we gotta go. Right now. Eddie shook his head. No, wait. I think there's someone in... There's nobody in there. Now. Eddie was desperate. He turned back to the barn. Morton grabbed him again. This time, Eddie spun around and swung wildly, hitting him in the chest. Morton fell to his knees, and Eddie's head was pounding. His face twisted in anger. He turned again to the flame, his eyes nearly shut. There. Was that it? Rolling behind the wall? There. He stepped behind, convinced something innocent was being burned to death in front of him. Then the rest of the roof collapsed with a roar, casting sparks like electric dust that rained down on his head. In that instant, the whole of the war came surging out of him like bile. He was sickened by the captivity and sickened by the murder, sickened by the blood and goo drying on his temples, sickened by the bombing and the burning and the futility of it all. At that moment, he just wanted to salvage something. A piece of Rebozo, a piece of himself. Something, and he staggered into the flaming wreckage, madly convinced there was a soul inside every black shadow. Plane roared overhead, and the shots from their guns rang out in drum beats. Eddie moved as if in a trance. He stepped past a burning puddle of oil, and his clothes caught fire from behind. A yellow flame to move up his calf and thigh. He raised his arm and hollered, "I'll help you. Come out. I won't shoot." A piercing pain ripped through Eddie's leg. He screamed a long, hard curse, then crumpled to the ground. Screamed along, and blood was spewing below his knee. Plane engines roared. His sky lit in bluish flashes. He lay there, bleeding and burning. His eyes shut against the searing heat, and for the first time in his life, he felt ready to die. Then someone yanked him backwards, rolling him in the dirt, extinguishing the flame. He was too stunned and weak to resist. He rolled like a sack of beans. Soon he was inside a transport vehicle, and the others were around him, telling him to hang on, hang on. His back was burned and his knee would have gone numb, and he was getting dizzy and tired. So very tired. The captain nodded, slowly, as he recalled those last moments. "You remember anything like how you got out of there?" he asked. "Not really," Eddie said. "It took 2 days. You were in and out of consciousness. You lost a lot of blood. We made it though." "Yeah," the captain said. "We made it." The captain drew a word out and punctuated with a sign. "The bullet got you pretty good, huh?" In truth, the bullet has never fully removed. It had cut through several nerves and tendons and shattered against the bone, fracturing it vertically. Eddie had 2 surgeries. Neither cured the problem. The doctor said he had been left with a limp, one likely to get worse with age as the mishap and bones deteriorate. "The best we can do," he was told. Was it? Who could say? All Eddie knew was that he would waken up in a medical unit and his life was never the same. His running was over. His dancing was over. Worse, for some reason, the way he used to feel about things was over too. He withdrew. Things seemed silly and pointless. War had crawled inside of Eddie, in his leg and in his soul. He learned many things as a soldier. He came home a different man. "Did you know?" the captain said, "that I came from 3 generations of military?" Eddie shrugged. "Yup. I knew how to fire a pistol when I was 6. In the morning, my father would inspect my bed, actually bounce a quarter on a sheet. At the dinner table, it was always, 'Yes, sir,' and 'No, sir.' Before I entered the service, all I did was take orders. Next thing I knew, I was giving them. Peacetime was one thing. Got a lot of wise guy recruits. But then the war started, and the new men flooded in. Young men like you. They were all saluting me, wanting me to tell them what to do. I could see the fear in their eyes. They acted as if I knew something about the war that was classified. They thought I could keep them alive. You did too, didn't you? Eddie had to admit he did. The captain reached back and rubbed his neck. I couldn't, of course. I took my order too. But if I couldn't keep you alive, I thought I could at least keep you together. In the middle of a big war, you go looking for a small idea to build in. When you find one, you hold it the way a soldier holds his crucifix when he's praying in a foxhole. For me, that little idea was what I told you guys every day. No one gets left behind. And he nodded. That meant a lot, he said. The captain looked straight at him. I hope so, he said. He reached inside of his breast pocket, took out another cigarette, and lit up. Why do you say that? Then he asked. The captain blew smoke, then mentioned with the end of the cigarette towards Eddie's leg. Because I was the one, he said, who shot you. And he looked at his leg, dangling over the tree branch. The surgery scar went back, so was the pain. He felt a welling of something inside him that he had not felt since before he died. In truth, that he had not felt in many years. A fierce, surging flood of anger, a desire to hurt someone. Something. His eyes narrowed, and he stared at the captain, or stared back blankly, as if he knew what was coming. He let the cigarette fall from his fingers. Go ahead, he whispered. Eddie screamed and lunged with a windmill swing, and the two men fell off the tree branch and tumbled through the limbs and the vines, wrestling and falling all the way down. Why? You bastard! You bastard! Not you! Why? They were grappling now on the muddy earth, and Eddie straddled the captain's chest, pummeled in with blows to the face. The captain did not bleed. Eddie shook him by the collar and banged his skull against the mud. The captain did not blink. Instead, he rolled from side to side with each punch, allowing Eddie his rage. Finally, with one arm, he grabbed Eddie and flipped him over. Because, he said calmly, his elbow across Eddie's chest, we'd have lost you in that fire. You would have died, and it wasn't your time. Eddie panted hard. My time? The captain continued. You were obsessed with getting in there. You damn near knocked Morton out because he tried to stop you. We had a minute to get out, and then your strength. You're too tough to fight. Eddie felt a final surge of rage and grabbed the captain by the collar. He pulled him close and saw a teeth stained yellow by tobacco. My leg, Eddie seethed. My life. I took your leg, the captain said quietly, to save your life. Eddie let go and fell back exhausted. His arm ached, was spinning. For so many years, he had been haunted by that one moment, that one mistake, when his whole life changed. There was nobody in that hut. What was I thinking? If only I didn't go in there. His voice dropped to a whisper. Why didn't I just die? No one gets left behind, remember? The captain said. What happened to you? I've seen it before. A soldier reaches a certain point, and then he can't go anymore. Sometimes in the middle of the night, a man will just roll out of his tent and start walking, barefoot, half naked, like he's going home, like his lift's just around the corner. Sometimes in the middle of the night, a man will drop his gun, and his eyes go blank. He's just done. Can't fight anymore. Usually, he gets shot. Your case is just so happened. You snap in front of a fire about a minute before we are done with this place. I could have let you burn alive. I figured a leg wound would heal you. We pulled you out of there. And the others got you to a medical unit. Eddie's breathing smacked like a hammer to his chest. His head was smeared with mud and leaves. It took him a minute to realize the last thing the captain had said. The others? Eddie said. What do you mean, the others? The captain rose. He brushed a twig from his leg. Did you ever see me again? He asked. Eddie had not. He had been airlifted to the military hospital, and eventually, because of his handicap, he was discharged and flew home to America. He had heard months later that the captain had not made it, but he figured it was some later combat with some other unit. A letter arrived eventually, with a medal inside, but Eddie put it away, unopened. The months after the war were dark, brooding, and he forgot details and had no interest in collecting them. In time, he changed his address. It was like I told you, the captain said. The tetanus, yellow fever, all those shots, just a big waste of my time. He nodded in a direction over Eddie's shoulder, and he turned to look. What he saw, suddenly, was no longer the barren hills, but the night of their escape. The hazy moon in the sky, the plane coming in, the huts on fire. The captain was driving the transport with Smitty, Morton, and Eddie inside. Eddie was across the back seat, burned, wounded, semi-conscious, as Morton tried to tourniquet above his knee. The shelling was getting closer, and the black sky lit up every few seconds, as if the sun was flickering on and off. The transport swerved as it reached the top of the hill. Then it stopped. There was a gate, a makeshift thing of wood and wire. Because the ground dropped off sharply on both sides, they could not go around it. The captain grabbed the rifle and jumped out. He shot the lock and pushed the gate open. He motioned for Morton to take the wheel. Then he pointed to his eyes, signaling that he would check the path ahead, which he curled into a thicket of trees. He ran as best as he could in his bare feet, 50 yards beyond the turn in the road. The path was clear. He waved to his men. The plane zoomed overhead, and he lifted his eyes to see whose side it was. It was at that moment, while he was looking to the heavens, a small click sounded beneath his right foot. The landmine exploded instantly. Like a burping flame from the Earth's core, it blew the captain 20 feet into the air and split him into pieces, one fiery lump of bones and gristles and 100 chunks of charred flesh, some of which flew over the muddy earth and landed in a banyan tree. That was the beginning of the second lesson. Jesus, Eddie said, closing his eyes, dropping his head backward. Oh God, I had no idea, sir. It's sick. It's awful. The captain nodded and looked away. The heel had returned to its parent state. The animal bones and a broken cart and the smoldering remains of the village. Yet he realized this was the captain's burial ground. No funeral, no coffin. Just his shattered skeleton in the muddy earth. You've been waiting here all this time? Eddie whispered. Time, the captain said. It's not what you think. He sat down next to Eddie. Dying? Not the end of everything. We think it is. But what happens on Earth is only the beginning. And he looked lost. I figure it's like the Bible. The Adam and Eve deal, the captain said. Adam's first night on Earth, when he lays down to sleep, he thinks it's all over, right? He doesn't know what sleep is. His eyes are closing and he thinks he's leaving the world, right? Only, he doesn't. He wakes up the next morning and he has a fresh new world to work with. But he has something else too. He has his yesterday. The captain grinned. The way I see it, that's what we're getting here, soldier. That's what heaven is. You get to make sense of your yesterday. You took out his plastic cigarette pack and tapped it with his finger. You following this? I was never all that hot at teaching. And he watched the captain slowly. He had always thought of him as much as older. But now, with some of the coal ash rubbed from his face, Eddie noticed the scant lines on his skin and the full head of dark hair. He must have only been in his 30s. You've been here since you died, Eddie said. But that's twice as long as you lived. The captain nodded. I've been waiting for you. And he looked down. That's what the blue man said. Well, he was too. He was part of your life, part of why you lived and how you lived, part of the story you need to know. But he told you he's beyond here now, and in a short bit, I'm gonna be as well. So listen up, because here's what you need to know from me. Eddie felt his back straighten. Sacrifice, the captain said. You made one. I made one. We all made them. But you were angry over yours. You kept thinking about what you lost. You don't get it. Sacrifice is a part of life. It's supposed to be. It's not something to regret. It's something to aspire to. Little sacrifices, big sacrifices. A mother works so her son can go to school. A daughter can move home to take care of her sick father. A man goes to war. He stopped for a moment and looked off in a cloudy gray sky. Raposo didn't die for nothing, you know. He sacrificed for his country, and his family knew it. His kid brother went on to be a good soldier and a great man because he was inspired by it. I didn't die for nothing either. That night, we might have all driven over that landmine. Then 4 of us would have been gone. Eddie shook his head. But you? He lowers his voice. You lost your life. The captain smacked his tongue on his teeth. That's the thing. Sometimes when you sacrifice something precious, you're not really losing it. You're just passing it on to someone else. The captain walked over to the helmet, rifle, and a dog tag, and a symbolic grave still stuck on the ground. He placed the helmet and tags under one arm, then plucked the rifle from the mud and threw it like a javelin. It never landed, just soared into the sky and disappeared. The captain turned. I shot you all right, he said. And you lost something when you gained something else as well. You just don't know it yet. I gained something too. What? I got to keep my promise. I don't leave you behind. He held out his palm. Forgive me about the leg? And he thought for a moment. He thought about the bitterness about his wounding, his anger at all he had given up. And he thought of what the captain had given up, and he felt ashamed. He offered his hand. The captain gripped it tightly. That's what I've been waiting for. Suddenly, the thick vines dropped off the banyan branches and melted into a hiss into the ground. New, healthy branches emerged into the yawning spread, covered in smooth, leathery leaves and pouches of figs. The captain only glanced up, as if he's been expecting it. Then, using his open palm, he wiped the remaining ash from his face. Captain? Eddie said. Yeah? Why here? You can pick anywhere to wait, right? That's what the blue man said. So why this place? The captain smiled. Because I died in battle. I was killed in these hills. I left the world, having known almost nothing but the war. War talk, war plans, a war family. My wish was to see what the world looked like without a war before we started killing each other. Eddie looked around. But this is war. To you. But our eyes are different, the captain said. What you see ain't what I see. He lifted a hand, and smoldering landscape transformed. The rubble mounted, tree grew and spread. The ground turned from mud to lush, green grass. The murky clouds pulled apart like curtains, revealing a sapphire sky. A light, white mist fell in above the treetops, and a peach-colored sun hung brilliantly above the horizon. Reflected in the sparkling ocean that now surrounded the island. It was pure, unspoiled, untouched beauty. Eddie looked up at his old commanding officer, whose face was clean, and whose officer, in a uniform, was suddenly pressed. This, the captain said, raising his arm, is what I see. He stood for a moment, taking it in. by the way, I don't smoke anymore. This was all in your eyes, too. What would I smoke in heaven, anyway? He begins to walk off. Wait, and he yelled, I gotta know something. My death at the pier. Did I save that girl? I felt her head, but I can't remember. The captain turned and Eddie swallowed his word. Embarrassed to even be asking, given the horrible way the captain had died. I just want to know. That's all. The captain scratched behind his ear. He looked at Eddie sympathetically. I can't tell you, soldier. Eddie dropped his head. But someone can. He tossed the helmet and tags. Yours. Eddie looked down. Inside the helmet, flashed of a crumbled photo of a woman that made his heart ache all over again. When he looked up, the captain was gone. And that is the second person and the second lesson that Eddie had encountered in the so-called heaven. As much as I'm not a very religious individual, I believe that anyone who has passed on will live a way better life than the ones that was before. The time on earth was only the beginning, as he said, and I totally understand that mentality. And of course, sacrifice. We all make big and small sacrifices. Some of the things crosses our mind, some of them don't. Small sacrifices, the ones where you realize that maybe drinking teas is more healthy than drinking cola right now. Those are the small steps and the small sacrifices that people don't appreciate. But truth is, you should. Every bit of your life has a meaning to it. And I'm glad that with all these meanings and all these sacrifices has led me up to this moment to be able to be here and enjoy this night with you. I hope all of you have enjoyed this session of ASMR literature. Until next time, when we continue to the third person. And I sincerely appreciate everyone who has participated in this very moment. Thank you, Cinnia. Thank you, Bakayasha. Thank you, Ice Follow. And of course, thank you, Mihail. Thank you, Aurora, Pudding, Itsuki. All of you. I appreciate your companies. And I hope you have a very great rest of your days. Until next time. I hope not so long later. Have a nice day.